The cameras flash, the headlines swirl, and once again the British media tries to act like Prince William is the saviour of charity work simply because he showed up at Centrepoint for the first time in months. They parade him out next to a giant chocolate cake, one he stared at like it had just insulted him personally, and suddenly the narrative becomes Prince William doesn't want to be an ornamental patron. The British press claps like trained seals. The royal rota pretends this is revolutionary. But anybody who actually pays attention knows the truth. The bar for William is on the floor, and every time he trips over it, his PR team tells the world he's flying. Meanwhile, Prince Harry and Duchess Meghan, two people who have quietly, consistently, and authentically dedicated themselves to real-world causes, are expected to stay silent while the press crowns William the King of Charity for a paintbrush stroke and a photo op. But we're not doing that today. Today we are telling the truth, the Sussex Squad truth, the truth the British tabloids refuse to print. Because the contrast between William's 20-year involvement and Harry and Meghan's actual impact is like night and day. One is ornamental performance. The other is live purpose, mission, and meaningful change. And that's why Sussex Squad exists, to push back against the lazy narratives, the manufactured praise, and the hypocrisy that somehow always gets disguised as royal duty. So let's begin. The scene is set at Centrepoint, where William is celebrating 2 decades of patronage. They give him a massive cake, lovingly prepared by Juliet Sear, a baker who knows royal preferences inside out. She tells the press William is a chocolate lover, a detail meant to humanize him, make him look relatable and charming. But the images show a man staring blankly, a 1,000-yard gaze fixed on something far beyond that cake. You would think a chocoholic would at least muster a smile. But no. Instead, we get the same vacant expression he gives at most engagements, as if public service is an inconvenience rather than a passion. He paints a small heart on a mural. He delivers a short speech. He shakes hands. He poses for photos. And then the press runs headlines about how deeply committed he is. But here's the truth the article exposes, the truth the British press doesn't want the public to notice. Even among his tiny handful of charities, he barely shows up. Even the work he does is framed through the lens of PR. And the real punchline? Even the people praising him admit they asked him 20 years ago to take on the role. And only now is it being spun into a narrative about William refusing to be ornamental. Here's the thing. There is nothing wrong with ornamental patronage. It has been a central function of royalty for over a century. Turning up, highlighting causes, raising funds by association, that is literally what the monarchy does. But what makes William's statement so ridiculous is the hypocrisy. Because if there's one person in that family who has proven they are not ornamental, it's Prince Harry. Harry is the one who built Invictus from the ground up. Harry is the one who walked with veterans, cried with them, built platforms for them, and dedicated nearly his whole adult life to their well-being. Harry is the one who didn't just lend his name, he lent his soul. And Meghan? Meghan isn't ornamental either. She is hands-on, intentional, strategic and compassionate. Whether it's the Grenfell cookbook, the SmartWorks capsule, or the women-led economic empowerment programs she continues to champion, she doesn't just show up. She builds something that lasts. So when William trots out this little line about not being an ornamental patron, it lands differently. It sounds like projection. It sounds like a man who knows exactly how little he has done and is trying desperately to frame it as a choice. Even the article indirectly calls it out. Because while the media pretends William works tirelessly, the truth is laid bare. He and Kate barely show up for their charities in the first place. They claim to be impact-driven while producing almost no impact. The cracks in the facade are showing, and people are beginning to notice. Because here's the real problem for William. Every time the palace tries to hype up one of his rare engagements, it reminds everyone just how much Harry used to carry the workload. Harry wasn't ornamental. Harry wasn't performing. Harry wasn't pretending. Harry was working. And that, no matter how much the UK press tries to rewrite history, is why they fear him. That is why they attack him. That is why they smear Meghan. Because nothing exposes an ornamental heir like a purposeful spare. Look at Centrepoint. Harry slept outside on the streets to raise awareness. Harry spoke from the heart about homelessness, poverty and dignity. Harry showed compassion not because it made good headlines, but because he genuinely cared. William shows up for the anniversary cake 20 years later and says he hopes he's lived up to expectations. Expectations. He barely met attendance. And yet the media tries to pretend Harry and Meghan are the ones lacking duty. The same media that once called Harry the only hard worker among the younger royals suddenly developed collective amnesia the moment he stood up for his wife. Let's be clear. This sudden obsession with William distancing himself from ornamental patronage is nothing but another attempt to create contrast between him and Harry. They want William to look serious and hard-working because Harry actually is serious and hard-working. This is PR, not reality. Because the article hits the nail on the head. The monarchy has survived on ornamental patronage for decades. The public doesn't expect the royals to solve homelessness. They expect visibility, awareness, fundraising, the basics. But William and Kate don't even meet the minimum anymore. They are so hyper-focused on not working that they've convinced themselves that working doesn't matter. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan, despite being outside the institution, are doing more for causes that matter than the future king and queen. Let me say that again. Harry and Meghan, with no royal staff, no palace machine, no taxpayer funding, and a media campaign against them, are outworking those sitting in palaces with unlimited budgets. That is why William's comments ring hollow. That is why his little cake-cutting event is not the flex his PR team thinks it is. That is why the world sees authenticity in Harry and Meghan and performance in William. Because here's the truth. You don't have to announce you're not ornamental when you actually do the work. Your actions speak. Your legacy speaks. Your impact speaks. When Meghan helped the women of Grenfell publish a cookbook that raised millions, that spoke. When Harry built Invictus into a global movement, that spoke. When they travelled to Nigeria and empowered communities, that spoke. When they created Archewell's programs around mental health, digital safety and community aid, that spoke louder than any royal soundbite ever could. Meanwhile, William paints a heart on a wall and suddenly he's changing lives. Sure, Jan, this is why the Sussex Squad stays loud, because without voices like ours, the truth gets buried under palace PR and tabloid propaganda. Harry and Meghan have never needed a crown to make change. They are proof that impact comes from intention, not inheritance. That leadership comes from compassion, not coronation. And that authenticity will always outshine empty performance. So yes, let William enjoy his chocolate cake. Let the tabloids write their glowing essays. Let the rota pretend this is what real service looks like. Because the world sees the difference. They see who actually works. They see who has purpose. They see who makes impact. And most importantly, they see who isn't ornamental at all. If you're watching this, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure your notifications are on, and if you believe in supporting real, meaningful, authentic work, the kind Harry and Meghan embody every single day, hit that super thanks button to keep independent Sussex Squad voices like this one alive. Because together we are not ornamental either. We are intentional, powerful, and unstoppable.